going to have a whole new look the next several years. The traditional role of dispensing meds to the general population is really changing. It's going towards a more clinical role.
Faculty do get to know the students on a very personal one-on-one basis and understand what their goals and inspirations are and what their interests are.
High school closed and nobody ever talked about it. I assumed it was closed because it was old. It had been up since 1802, and although it received some renovations over the years, it never got updated the way that we all thought it should have. I graduated at 18 and spent 3 years at home. My time spent at home was normally spent taking care of my parents. Both of them had health issues. When I wasn't home with them, I was spending my time working at Jack's auto shop down the street. My mom and dad died that 3rd year and I left. I couldn't stand to live in the house, and although I didn't have the heart to sell the house, so I just decided to leave and not look back. My plan always was to come back once I had had a clear head. I was away from home for 4 years. A couple of months ago, I decided that I should return to my childhood home. Rent was rising in my area, and I was starting to grow tired of the hustle of living in the big city. What pushed me to leave was the headaches that I had been having. For a while, they were under control, but as time went on, they only got far worse. Seeing the Welcome to Greenridge sign, it felt like a wave of relief was washing over me. Something about being in a familiar place made me feel relaxed. Despite having not been here in years, everything was coming back to me in waves. I knew where the nearest grocery store was, all of the important stores, and even the theater. I was shocked that the theater was still up and operational. As I drove down the street, I decided to go check out my old stomping grounds. I drove past the middle school and could tell that it had been freshly renovated. The once brick building was replaced by a white building with large windows. I wasn't surprised to see that the football field was renovated as well. The biggest surprise was seeing the new hockey rink on the grounds. Hockey was always popular here, and I was happy that the kids would have access to the sport in a comfortable environment. My next stop was the high school. Since it was Monday, I figured they would already be done with classes because I was arriving around 4 p.m. When I finally reached the building, I was shocked to see the windows shuttered and the grass overgrown. It looked like no one had been here in years. I heard rumors a while back about the school closing for renovations the same year that I had turned 21, but there was no other building here. I thought they might have put it somewhere else, but I wondered why they would keep the building up if nobody was using it. As I moved my car forward to turn around, I noticed a man standing in the grass tending to the weeds. It took me a minute, but I finally got my car over enough to speak with him. "Excuse me," I called the man. He called back without looking up. His clothes were tattered and worn down, covered in dirt and grime. I could recognize that he was wearing the custodian's uniform from the high school.
Wait, what?
It even had the gecko on the back.
Yeah.
What happened here? I used to go here years ago. And did they build a new building or what? I asked him as I leaned out of the driver's side window. "I'll come back tomorrow and I'll tell you the story," the man said oddly before walking away. I laughed a little, and I told him that I would be back and decided to take a shortcut back home. There were no other cars behind me and none near my house. Cutting through the high school was the fastest way to reach my street. As I drove down the street, I looked at each one of my neighbors' houses. Everything looked old and each one had a for sale sign in the yard. Something must have happened. I remembered this street being lively and active. I pulled my car into my house, took the keys, and opened the door. Everything was just as I had left it. Waves of sadness washed over my body. I remembered walking into the living room to find my dad watching TV and reading the paper. My mom would be baking something and would even meet in the living room to show me what she bought while I was out. Running my hand through my hair, I walked right over to the couch and sat down. I sneezed because of the dust and let my current situation set in. After thinking about my life for a while, I got up to start cleaning the house up. It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, so I focused on the living room to start. The rest would have to come later. I ordered a pizza for dinner and I set up my laptop to watch some TV. The last thing on my mind was school, especially since I was finally able to get comfortable in my parents' house. As I sunk into the couch and looked out the window, it dawned on me how quiet the street was. No cars came down the road. The only sound was coming from my laptop. I sighed and I turned off my show. Before going to bed, I decided to do some research on the high school. I couldn't find anything though. There was nothing about it anywhere online. I thought that I was losing my mind. I looked for why the school had closed. I searched for the name of my street, and for both of those things, I couldn't get any answers. I had started to get annoyed, so I closed the laptop and I went to bed on the couch. When I woke up on Tuesday, I had a splitting headache. It felt like the weight of the world was resting on my face. The pressure was too much to ignore. I got up and I hobbled to the bathroom to see if there was any medicine left over, though it would probably be expired by now. As I got to the bathroom, the pressure began to lift from my head. It's hard for me to explain it, but it felt like I had to leave the house, almost like I was compelled to go. I took a quick shower, brushed my teeth, got dressed, and left the house right after. I figured I would stop for a breakfast or something. I just had to get out of the house. When I got outside, I triple-checked everything and made sure the door was locked before getting in my car. My hands were trembling. I took a sharp left to go to the closest store. I wanted to grab a coffee and something to eat. As soon as I had turned down the street, the pain in the back of my head came. This time, though, it felt much worse. I had to slam on the brakes, and luckily nobody was behind me. I turned my head back and backed the car up just enough to turn around and start heading back to my house. The closer to the house that I got, the more the pain increased. At this point, I could hardly see the road. I kept driving until I hit the turn that led to the high school. I could get to the clinic faster by cutting through. The pain in my head began to lift again as I approached the high school. Once I pulled my car over to the curb, the pain was gone completely. "You came back," a familiar voice called to me. The man was here already, tending to the same spot in the grass that he was looking after when I came yesterday. "Yeah," I said under my breath before opening my car door and stepping out to talk to the man. The weather by the school was nice and warm, much warmer than outside of my house. It felt like it was summer. I mean, I had to hear about what happened here. I laughed as I leaned on my car. "So, what can you tell me?" I tried to look it up on the internet, but I didn't find anything, I told the man. I figured that I had some time to kill before trying to figure out what to do about my head. My first thought was maybe a tumor, but that wouldn't clearly explain why the pain came and went depending on where I was at. The man stood up fully and put his weight on his rake. 4 kids were killed here a couple of years ago. 4 more before that, and 4 more before that. He waved his hand as if he was telling me a fairy tale or something. Like he was telling me something that didn't sound extremely serious. Each time there was a murder, they got more and more gruesome, he said solemnly. 5 kids were supposed to die each time, but one always got away, he explained before turning to face the school. The murders left our whole city divided. Blame was thrown all over. Some thought the killer was a teacher. Others thought that it was a parent, he said before turning back to face me. "I'm surprised you don't remember this," he told me. I didn't. I had never heard anything about the murders. "So, who actually did it?" I asked as I shoved my hands into my pockets. No one knows. The man said as he moved to continue tending to the grass in the same spot. He moved over and over again, but the grass never changed. Wait, 12 teenagers were murdered and they never caught the person who did it. I was baffled. 13, the man corrected me. The last time there was a murder, it was supposed to be twins. 2 girls, he said as he adjusted his hat. One of the girls survived though, youngest of the bunch, he shrugged. The survivors would be turning 16 this year. He pointed out to me before starting to walk away. I had so many questions, and the most pressing one was, who exactly was this guy and why had he been tending to the same spot of grass for 2 days now? That was a lot of murder and nobody had told me. No one called. I never heard about anything like that in the news, and for the life of me, I couldn't find anything about the school or the town on the internet. I got back in my car and went to leave. My curiosity was now satiated. As I got to the end of the parking lot, that pain came back, and it came back with a vengeance. Felt like somebody was drilling a screwdriver into my forehead. I slammed into the brakes and backed up. I went back to the property of the school and put my teeth together. Something wanted me to be here. As I moved my hand to clean the blood trickling out of my nose and down my lips, I considered my options. I thought that I was going insane. I considered driving to the clinic, but if my vision went out again, I would accidentally kill someone. For a moment, I considered calling 911, but in the back of my mind, I knew that was a bad idea. Something wanted me to be here. My hands tightened around my steering wheel and I closed my eyes. I mean, a nap wouldn't hurt after all. Who was going to bother me? I woke up to a knocking at my window. It was the groundskeeper. I had to rub my eyes and make sure that it was him. Why was he at my car window? I rolled the window down. Hey, he tossed a flashlight onto my lap. You're going to need that, he told me as he walked away. I don't think I've ever been more confused in my life. These last few days have been something else. I grabbed the flashlight and jumped out of my car like I was moving on autopilot. Something wanted me to go to the school. Deep down, I think I wanted to go in too. I felt like I was both in and out of my body, like I was extremely tired but also extremely awake. It was a weird feeling to feel like I was being torn in half. I walked up to the front doors and opened them. I was honestly surprised that they weren't locked up. The main hallway was exactly how I had remembered it. Our mascot, the Green Ridge gecko, was stamped right in the middle of the floor. The downstairs area was dedicated to electives in the lunchroom. The auditorium was to my left behind the big brown doors. The gym was further in and the lunchroom was to the right. And despite the building looking worn down on the outside, the inside of the building was in great condition. Hello? Hello? I called. Hearing my voice echoing was strange. This place used to be so full of noise, I wasn't expecting an answer. My blood ran cold when a scream came from the auditorium. It cut through the silence like a warm knife through butter. I turned as quickly as I could and ran for the doors. I stopped at the seats furthest in the back. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. A hooded figure wearing a sleek red mask was holding a girl by her neck. Her toes couldn't touch the ground. Both figures were blue, almost completely see-through. The figure plunged a knife into the girl's abdomen 3 times. Each time the knife was ripped out, the victim gagged, and eventually the killer slammed her body down and continued at it, the final blow landing right between her eyes. What the? I spit out before turning to the door to run away. I was going to go get the cops. Maybe they could catch this guy. I assumed it was the same killer that the groundskeeper was talking about. As I left the auditorium, a blue figure came walking past me. It was the same girl who was just on the stage. I could recognize her white jacket. I reached my hand out to grab her arm and was shocked to find that I could. She looked completely see-through, almost like a ghost. "You can't go in there," I told her seriously. "You're going to die," I warned. I watched her face twist in confusion. As I turned to look back into the auditorium, I could see the masked figure waiting for her on the stage. We made eye contact. I tightened my grip on the girl's arm and pulled her out of the doorway. A blue spark appeared at the edge of the door, and the rim of the doorway lit up with a baby blue color. "What is that?" the girl asked me. She looked beyond confused, and I was right there with her. I tugged at her again. "Follow me." I watched her body materialize. I watched as the color came back to her skin. I could see the color return to her eyes. I watched her face come back to life. I almost threw up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. "You're alive," I mumbled. I could see the tears gathering in her eyes. "I was stabbed," she told me. "Well, not anymore," I said with confidence. "Now, we're leaving." I pointed to the front door and we started to run for it when I heard screaming catch the air behind us. In a flash, I turned around and I backed up with the girl. An axe hit the door from on top of the stairs. A man wearing a mascot hat was standing on the stairs holding another axe. "Are you kidding me?" I screamed before turning to the door to open it. As my hand hit the door, an axe hit my wrist. I screamed out and watched my hand hit the floor. My world was becoming a blur. I slowly reached down to pick up my hand. Blood was pooling on the floor. "We have to run," the girl screamed at me, but I could barely focus. I felt a sharp pain in my shoulder. The world was ringing. The next thing I knew, my legs were moving. I turned my head slightly and there was a smaller axe sticking out of my shoulder. I thought that I was going to lose my arm. The girl was dragging me. Once we had hit the emergency exit, I thought that she was going to disappear. I thought that everything would disappear, but it didn't. Instead, we went running across the parking lot in the back and looped around to my truck. "The hospital," I mumbled. "I'll drive," she said before helping me into the passenger seat. The rest of what happened is all a blur. I know that we got to the hospital and I know that I was there for a while and I know that we eventually went back to my house. I was in and out of it throughout most of the process. Heck, I don't even really remember the hospital visit. My hand and arm are completely wrapped up. Both cuts were clean. The lapses in my memory are scaring the heck out of me. And this girl is still with me. She says that her name is Kira. We have a lot of talking to do.
It's a recon tank.
Kira and I had to lay low for a while after what had happened at the high school.
Made Good is a highly thoughtful snack brand made with you in mind. With wholesome organic ingredients, every snack is free from the most common allergens. Plus, we taste good. Really, really good. It's how we're made good. Highly thoughtful snacks.
Bradley tanks.
My left hand was
How long did
completely
it take you to
unusable.
finish the swimming part?
Luckily, they were able to reattach it to my wrist. My shoulder is still recovering, but it'll be a while until I can use my left arm. We decided to take a few days to gather our thoughts and go over what we know. Kira filled me in on what she could remember, and I shared what I could remember. Together, we were able to put some major pieces to this puzzle in place. Kira told me that she didn't fully
I'm
remember
like
being
a little
attacked
bit
in the
over halfway and I'm
auditorium.
at 20 minutes.
Most of that day was a complete blur for her. She told me that she was on the stage to help set up for a school play. Nobody else was there yet, and she had just left her science class. I asked her if she remembered the person in the mask, the one who had lifted her and killed her. My first thought was maybe this was a bully or somebody that she had bullied. She did remember the killer but told me that he felt too strong to be another student. He lifted her up with ease and held her like she was made of paper. And Kira told me that she had clawed his wrist, but by the time that he had his hand around her neck, she felt like she couldn't move.
The fuck? Somebody just
She
flew over me with a
detailed how it
helicopter.
felt to be strangled and the pain that shot through her body when he slammed her onto the stage. She had a scar on her nose where I saw the knife land.
Like, what's the
I
chances
asked
of
her
that
about
in
it
the
and
middle
she
of the
said
fucking
she
ocean?
didn't remember how she got it.
Oh,
We talked on the couch for hours. I asked her if she had noticed anything weird at school that day and she told me that she didn't.
Yeah.
What stood out to me was that she didn't remember the murders happening.
Hidden.
At this possible to keep her from going back
That's
to the
amazing. You
stage.
might be able to just... Oh no, that's okay.
Someone commented last time about how I took Kira from death, and I couldn't agree more. Somehow I was able to reach into wherever she was and pull her out of there. Finally, I asked her about the axe-wielding man who tried to kill both of us. She told me that was the first time she had ever seen that person, and we both agreed that we didn't want to meet him again. That night, I took out an old notebook and decided to write some things down. I knew for sure that I would be going back to Greenridge High School. It was only a matter of time before the headaches returned. For the moment, I am calling the two murderers, Redface and Mascot Killer. I know the names suck, but whatever. I noted that Mascot Killer was found at the top of the stairs. Kira told me that he never came downstairs to chase us. Redface never left the auditorium, so we assume that is where he'll always be found. I know it's a big stretch to say they will never leave where we've seen them, but if Redface had wanted Kira so badly, I felt like he would have come after us anyway. After taking my notes, I went to sleep. We spent the next few days staying inside and away from the windows. I had to assume that people thought that Kira was dead, so seeing her walking around would raise a lot of red flags.
2:30.
You're going back. Kira snapped at me as she watched me pack up a small backpack. Yes, I have to go back. I told her seriously as I put my flashlight under my good arm. I was wondering if I would see the groundskeeper again. In the back of my mind, I felt like he knew what was going to happen when I walked into the school. You only have one good arm, Kira pointed out as she followed me around the house. I know. I sighed before placing some money on the counter. That's for food, but only order food as a last resort. We still have some leftovers. I opened the fridge to double check and make sure that there was enough food for her to heat up if she got hungry. Let me help you, Kira pleaded with me. No, if we're seen by anyone, they will have a lot of questions. Plus, I'm not putting you in the crosshairs of a bunch of murderers, I said seriously. I took my car keys from the table and stopped at the front door. If I don't come back, dye your hair or something and get out of here, I told Kira before opening the front door and heading out to my car. I waited on the steps to make sure that she locked the door. The last time that I made this drive, everything was foggy. I was in a lot of pain and it felt like everything around me was only going to get worse. This time, despite feeling waves of uncertainty pouring over my body, I felt clear. I felt like for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do, at least as far as going back to school was concerned. As I pulled up to Greenridge High School, I scanned the area for the groundskeeper. I was surprised he wasn't sitting in the same spot that he always was. I parked my car and I walked up to the building. I probably should have at least taken Kira with me to be the getaway driver in case I got injured again. Back so soon, the groundskeeper asked me. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I heard his voice. I turned around and sure enough, there he was, holding his rake and wearing the same clothes that he was wearing the last time that I saw him. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? I gasped. I didn't hear him coming up behind me. He only laughed and walked back to the grass to continue working. I watched him for a second before moving my flashlight to try and open the door. I eventually got it, but I really should have taken Kira with me. Walking back into the school was like walking through a thick fog. It felt like I had to force myself through the doorway. I turned my head to see if the axe mark was still in the door, and sure enough it was. My blood was still on the floor too. I was attacked in here. This time my head felt incredibly clear in the building though. It was a weird feeling, to know exactly where I needed to
Shit,
be.
he's on fire though.
I was not going to go to the second floor with one hand, so I decided to continue on the first floor. I had my choice of the lunchroom or the gym,
Yeah,
and
explicitly
I
would've
went
fucked
with
him
the
up.
gym. As I walked towards it, I took a second to look around me. There was
Yeah, they're
no
trying to get
sign
an
of
outfit
mascot
out here.
killer or a red
Behind us.
face. The gym was down a hallway like the lunchroom. The locker rooms were divided by the office for the coach.
We'll find him.
As I walked down the hallway, I heard rustling coming from the girls' locker room. Eventually, that rustling turned into screaming.
Like this loud.
At first, I didn't want to open the door though.
Come on.
When the
Swim,
second scream
motherfucker,
interrupted
swim.
the silence, I ripped the door open. The locker room was an absolute mess. Blood painted the walls, but it was very old. Get away from me! I heard a girl scream. I ran through the room before finding the girl, and I couldn't believe my eyes.
Going all the way to our base.
The girl was wearing a gym uniform. Unlike Kira, her outline was green. She was still see-through though. The man standing behind her looked like a giant in comparison. He was wearing the school's hockey uniform and a hockey mask. I reached out to see if I could reach the girl before she was murdered.
I don't feel like
She
doing
ran
this.
backward though, placed her foot on the wall, and boosted herself up to the window.
Oh,
I watched her climb out. She wasn't killed. I didn't have too much time to think about it because the killer turned his attention to me. He was see-through for a second. I watched as his skin slowly appeared. In a matter of seconds, he was becoming whole.
Okay.
I turned as
Oh,
quickly as possible, nearly tripping on clothes, and ran back down the hallway as fast as I could. I was running away from the gym and this killer was following me. I heard his hockey stick hit the wall when he tried to swing it at my back. The moment that I was out of the hallway, the killer
Shit was
stopped
on fire,
following me.
too.
He was just standing there right at the end, watching me. He wasn't as big as I thought he was, and he was probably about 6'4" or 6'5", but not
Yeah,
ginormous.
if we had a periscope
He did
person,
have
we
massive
would've been
shoulders
here
though,
fucking-
and his clothing was caked in dry blood. As he stood there watching me, I couldn't help but wonder.
I got a little
Who did he
fucking
kill?
window I can look through.
It looked like he was guarding the hallway, so I decided to back up and head to the lunchroom instead. I clenched the flashlight tightly, fully expecting somebody to come running at me the moment that I opened the lunchroom doors. I had to push on these doors hard. Something was blocking them from the other side. I was eventually able to get one of the doors open with my good shoulder. I could hear the table scraping the floor as I pushed the door open. The room was an absolute disaster. Somebody was clearly trying to
We could
barricade
just
the
watch
door
whole
shut.
backside so they don't try to get
The
behind us.
tables were set up in a way to keep the doors pinned. From across from where I was standing,
Yeah,
I
these
could
little
see the
trenches are
same
really good,
setup
too,
on
'cause
the
it
other
covers
side of
pretty
the
much
room.
From a certain angle, it covers the whole
As I
purpose
walked
of the
further
barrel.
into the lunchroom, I called, "Is anybody in here? I'm not here to hurt you." I stopped walking for a second to wait for an answer.
Oh, guy in front
When I
of us.
didn't get one, I continued to explore the room. I almost gave up before I noticed one of the tables that was still right side up had a
Peeking from the
book
right.
sitting on it.
Right
I walked over and put my flashlight in my mouth and brought the book closer to me. It was a school yearbook, but something was wrong with it.
124.
It was a white
127.
book with our mascot on it. Nothing
I love
about
how
it
he-
looked
I love how he
special there.
crouched
There was no
right,
year.
Like they're in the middle of the fucking.
I was going to look through it, but I heard the door creak open behind me. I forgot to put the tables back where I had found them. I quickly put the book in my backpack and took the flashlight in my good hand. The moment that light in the door, something slammed into my leg with enough force to bring me to my knees. I looked down. Large glass shards were sticking out of my skin. I looked up to see where the attack came from, and that's when I saw her. She was wearing a long white coat and large circular glasses that I hadn't seen anybody wearing in a long time.
Put armor piercing
She had a
rounds in.
tall
If you
glass in
have-
her
if you only
hand.
have that, whatever,
She must
shoot
have
it.
thrown one at
Armor
me.
piercing.
I quickly
I
forced
circled
myself
around-
up and went
I
for an
circled
exit
around
before
him.
remembering
He had him
that
in
all
the
of the
ass,
doors except the one
Well,
that I
I'll
came
let
in
you know
from,
when.
I had to run around her to get out. As I ran towards the woman, I tried to sidestep her. She slammed the glass into
Okay.
my back and I
Oh,
stumbled
that's a
forward.
perfect shot right
I
there.
thought that she would be weaponless now, but as I turned around to see if she was chasing me, I watched a new glass cup start to take shape in her hand.
Yep. Hit it again.
I took 2 steps
yeah,
back and I
boy.
ran for the
They
door.
fucked these big boys
I
up.
managed to use my foot to push it open fully before being hit in the back again. Luckily, she was only throwing glass at me.
Shit.
It was something that I knew I could walk off.
Good shit.
I ran for the front door
These things are
expecting
fucking
Mascot Killer to be
painkillers.
waiting at the top of the steps, but he wasn't there. I could hear the woman leaving the lunchroom.
He was
As I
probably a
tucked the
solo,
flashlight
too.
under my
That's
bad
why.
arm, I ripped the front door open and practically
of
threw
solo
myself
tankers.
outside. See you soon, the groundskeeper called to me as I ran to my truck. I jumped inside and pulled some glass out of my knee before driving
Looks
home.
like that's where their spawn is.
After I got back from my last trip to the school, I went to bed.
I
decided- I decided to fill Kira in when she woke up in the morning.
Oh, another one?
I set my
Good.
flashlight on the
Oh,
coffee
yeah.
table, then pulled the yearbook out of my backpack.
Let's see this right now.
I figured we could go over the book together in the morning.
It's gonna be to the right. Oh,
That's
no.
insane. Kira snapped at me as she paced around the living room.
Okay.
I know it sounds crazy, but she climbed out of the window and got away. I told Kira as I watched her dart around the living room. If she got away, why was she still glowing? Kira asked me. She had a good point and I didn't have an answer for her. I honestly don't know, I said as I sat on the couch. And who was in the lunchroom? Do you think someone else is looking around the school?
Oh, I think
Kira
what the fuck is
asked
it?
me
These
as she
are
sat in the
apples,
recliner for
from
a
not-
second before
Oh,
getting
no.
up to pace again. I have no idea. I
Yeah,
mumbled.
they fucking turned.
Well, we need to
yeah,
get an idea.
Yeah, he turned with the
Kira
fucking
snapped at
girl.
me.
That sucks.
I didn't have enough energy to yell at her. I knew why she was getting so worked up about all of this. Headaches might have been drawing me to the school, but she died there and we still didn't know who killed her and why.
Let's go mid.
Well, we can look at the yearbook.
Oh, yeah.
I suggested to her.
And then, I'm gonna-
We have to go back to the school and see if somebody is there looking around, Kira said. I shook my head no. We have clues now, okay? Let's check out this yearbook, I said again, this time
Yeah,
using my
man,
good
we
arm to
gotta
flip the book
recon in
open.
mid.
When I saw what was inside, my heart sank. The first few pages were empty. I flipped through the book faster, every single page was empty. In a fit of rage, I slammed the book shut and tossed it across the room. I got hit with glass for no reason and we were back to square one. We had nothing. Kira flinched back as she watched the book hit the floor. Sorry, I said seriously. I wasn't trying to scare her. It's okay, Kira whispered as she sat on the chair.
Really fun.
I could see it on her
I should've-
face.
I
She
should've
was feeling
probably
hopeless.
Went left and had
There was
shoot
nothing
when
that I
went
could do
left,
to
and
assure
then
her that
when
we
you do
would
that
find
turn,
anything.
then you can start doing, like, circles around.
Tomorrow, we will go back and get answers. Come heck or high water, but we have to be prepared first. I told Kira as I got off the couch.
Mid HQ too.
Gear, food, water, and a weapon are a must. I trailed on as I
Oh, no,
walked to
I
my
had to go to game
bedroom.
chat.
I grabbed an
can't
extra
talk to them while I'm
backpack and brought it out to Kira.
Um,
We're gonna get answers, I said seriously as I handed
yeah,
her the
you have
bag.
to. You have to be like,
Kira took it
"Imagine if we
inside.
get a tank."
What do you want me to
And
do?
you're like, okay, yeah.
Fill up the water bottles in the kitchen. I'm gonna head to the store.
Here you go.
I told her as I grabbed my car keys and left.
Fucking
The moment that I started driving away from the house, my headache started coming back. It wasn't as strong as all the other ones, and it was
Yeah.
something that I could push through to make sure that I got what we needed. I couldn't go too far because the further that I went, the worse that the headache became. I had to settle for going to the corner store.
Yes, I can. I can.
I got us more
move it
water, some
barely, like,
food, and each one of us a
into-
special drink. I got myself a soda and Kira an apple juice,
That's
because
how
she had
people
killed
also
3 bottles of
appreciate
juice
those.
already.
They get mad at you.
I made
They
sure to
could
grab
make-
food that would last, and snacks
but just
because I
fucking
knew that we
run
could
in front
eat
of
them
your
quickly.
tank and get killed. So
The
they can
challenge was
get your
finding
time.
anything that we could use that
I
might
I made it
make
to
a
the
decent
shore at
weapon.
36 minutes.
I didn't end up finding anything, and we were going to have to use what I had in the
Yeah, right,
house.
that's right around where I said you would.
Finally, I bought some gum
Doing
and
that for a
scratch-off
while, too.
tickets.
You just go in this
I
line
used the
and
last of my cash to buy a small flashlight for Kira. It wasn't anything amazing, but at least she would have one if she needed it. I packed up the car and I started to head home. Once again, the closer that I got to my house, the more that the headache began to lift.
Do you have a lot of food or no?
I was starting to
Yeah.
wonder what force
I've
was
filled my
drawing me
throat
back
food.
to the school,
Oh, you gotta
and what it wanted with me in the
medium
first
thing.
place.
That's like stuff
You
right
got
there.
some juice? Kira asked as she went to grab the bottle. I laughed
Yeah.
and held it away from her.
He's
I did,
here.
but you have to put it in your bag,
Died,
I said seriously as I
and
handed her the
repaired, or
bottle.
he just left?
Are you expecting us to be inside for a long time? Kira asked me while she was helping me pack the backpacks.
There's also
If we get
supplies
stuck,
going
we
on
need to
right
make
there.
sure that we have supply. When I was in the lunchroom, I noticed that somebody had barricaded the doors. If I had to guess, they spent the night, or at least were using the room as a base of sorts. I explained to Kira as we took our bags to my car and climbed inside. Before we go in, I have to check something out with the groundskeeper, I told her as we drove to Greenridge High School. The school doesn't have
I
one.
think you've told me
Kira
about
said,
him a while
confused.
ago.
When I was in school, we did, but this guy is different, I think.
Yeah.
He tends the same plot of grass for hours, I said as we pulled into the school. I wanted to jump out and check the grass right away, but he was standing on it.
Oh, the ugly
He
ass
was
kid?
working the same way that he was
Same
the last
fucking
time that I
bony
saw
bitch that
him.
looks like she's
At least I
dying.
knew where he was this time.
Well, she is dying.
I parked the car and froze. There was another car sitting in the parking lot. Someone else is here, I told Kira as I hopped out of the car. From where we were standing, I could tell that the car was empty. Maybe we should check the car, Kira suggested as she grabbed her bags.
I don't know why
No.
girls think that's
I shook
fucking
my
hot.
head and took my
And
bag with
especially
my
with-
good arm. Kira handed me my flashlight and we walked toward the building. Checking the car could
Yeah,
be a
well-
good idea, but I didn't want to give someone a reason to call the
It's
cops
like
on
that
us.
arm.
And we have to go to the main office first, I told Kira. I wasn't going to leave any room for discussion. The main office could have many useful things. I was hoping for an employee log, keys, or anything of importance. As we walked through the first floor, I told Kira to stay away from the hallway that leads to the gym. He also kept an eye out for the woman who was throwing glass at me.
Oh, in front of us?
I was sure
my
that she
God.
must be able to walk
All in
around the
front of us.
halls freely, if she was in the lunchroom.
Also someone behind the tree.
And what if there's a
at-
killer in there? Kira asked as we finally reached the main office. We were
blow him up,
fortunate
shoot,
that everything
and
we
shoot
needed so
fucking
far was on the
whoever
first
that is.
floor.
Oh, he's got an RPG.
To get to the main
the right,
office,
in
we
the
had to
trenches.
continue down the front
There's,
hallway,
there's 3 people
towards
in
the
trench.
elective rooms.
You shoot that little
While
box.
we run, I whispered to
87.
Kira. I gave her my flashlight and we went to open the office door.
You see that
And
box?
surprisingly, it actually
straight ahead of
opened
us.
for
It's
us.
like 84.
Kira
It's like
screamed at the top of her lungs.
Oh, yeah, there's
A
spawning right
voice
there.
from the
Fuck.
door snapped.
Yeah.
Be quiet. The door opened fully and a woman looked out at us and moved the door to
Oh,
let
that's
us
a fucking
in.
outpost. Oh, fuck.
Kira quickly moved
I
into the main
destroyed it.
office and I followed after
Oh,
her.
in front of us. Shoot
The
the building.
blonde woman locked the door before turning to us. She was pointing a kitchen knife at me. Who are you and why are
Okay,
you
cool.
here? The woman asked me. Caleb,
I
my
didn't
name is
see
Caleb
that.
and this is
I didn't see
Kira.
their outpost.
Who are you?
Their main outpost right
I asked the woman as
there.
I
was
kept
like,
my
man,
good hand
shit,
up.
look.
Cassandra, she said as she reached out to tap each of us. I was confused for a moment, but she must have been making sure that we were real. I wasn't expecting anybody else to be here. Cassandra told me once that she was done with her inspection. Neither were we, I told her honestly.
Yeah, I could.
Were you
I
the
don't
one
think
who
so.
left the blank yearbook in the lunchroom? I asked her as I started moving around the office. I was looking for student records, keys, or anything that we could use to help us finally get answers. Yes, I couldn't figure out what to do with it and I had to get going. Cassandra told me as she watched me look around. There was nothing of note in the first area of the office. I couldn't find any records. It was like the whole place had been cleaned out. Why is this place empty? I questioned Cassandra. I was hoping she would tell me that we had arrived as she was cleaning the place out. I was wondering the same thing. I haven't checked the principal's office yet. Cassandra told me as she motioned to the only other door in this room. Why the heck did you bring a kid here? Cassandra asked me. Well, I found her here. I explained to Cassandra as I tested the door to the principal's office. He saved my life, Kira corrected. She was a spirit, I think. I told Cassandra as I opened the door. I was expecting her to be surprised. I thought she would laugh at me or think that I was joking. Green, blue, red, or orange? Cassandra asked me as she and Kira followed me into the office. She was bluish, I guess. Why? As I asked Cassandra, I went right over to the desk in the room and opened every drawer. Eventually, I found a set of keys. And because I was wondering if you figured out what the colors were for, Cassandra sighed. I looked up at both of them and smiled.
What the fuck?
I finally found something useful, I said as I put the key ring on the desk.
What the fuck?
That's a lot of keys, Kira said as she walked over to examine the key ring. One of those has to be a skeleton key, Cassandra told us as she went through the filing cabinets. I could hear her swearing and slamming things shut. What? Kira asked her. Every file is empty.
I think they kicked
Cassandra snapped as she slid her hands through her hair. I could tell that we were both thinking the same thing. Someone had to have been here before us. The only other person that I've seen here has been the groundskeeper. I haven't seen him enter the building, but maybe he came in here to clean the place out. Once we had finished looking around the room, Cassandra put the empty files on the desk. Lucky for us, they were still labeled. I went through each of the names on the empty files. Ava Miller, Liam Cooper, Mason Kent, Harper Scott, Grace Thompson, and Lucas Reed. There weren't enough files for all of the murdered teenagers and the ones who went away, but this was a good place to start. I took the folders into my backpack and looked up at Cassandra. Why are you here? I asked her seriously. For all I knew, she could be hiding her crimes. My brother died here and my sister Hannah got away. I was away from school when I got the phone call. By the time that I got here, my family's house was packed up and most of the furniture was already gone. Cassandra closed her eyes tightly. My sister left me a note in my old bedroom. It said that she had run away, but she didn't leave an address or any indication as to where she would be going. I've been looking for her for months, Cassandra said as she opened her eyes to look at me and Kira. I had a lot of questions that I wanted to ask, but before I could, we hear screaming coming from the hallway. We ran around the girls to get to the office door. What are you doing? Cassandra snapped as she followed me. I can help them, I snapped back. You only have one arm, Kira tried to remind me. I let my head hang out of the doorway for a second. The commotion was coming from closer to the art rooms. I slowly left the office and walked down the hallway. I was trying to keep my boots as quiet as possible.
I'm at 45 minutes.
I turned the corner to the art rooms and I watched as a see-through man slammed a boy into the lockers face first. The boy was glowing orange. After a few more slams, the man lifted the boy and slammed him into the floor. I watched as the tile crashed under the weight. I heard a loud snapping sound. I'm assuming the boy passed when his neck hit the floor. I waited for a second to see if there was anything that I could do. The killer walked over to the trash can at the end of the hallway. It was also glowing. This was the first time that an object was glowing. The yellow glow from the trash can illuminated the killer just enough for me to see his coaching jacket. Most of the back of the jacket was ripped apart. It looked like a cat or something had clawed massive slash marks into it. I watched as he slowly pulled a girl from the trash can. She coughed and spit blood all over him. She looked different too. Her glow was red, and despite everything being see-through, she was the most clear to me.
User left your channel.
She screamed at him, hit him in the face, and she was fighting back, but it didn't matter. Using her leg, he slammed her from locker to locker like she was weighing nothing. I couldn't watch him kill her. It was hard enough to listen to it. Once he was done, I turned my head to look back down the hallway. The images were fading away. Last time this happened, I was able to intercept Kira before she was murdered in the auditorium. I waited until the killer faded completely before rushing down the hallway. As I ran down the hallway to see if I could interfere with the trash can, Kira spoke from behind me. What are you doing? I'm gonna save 2 more people, I hissed to Kira. You and Cassandra pick a spot to hide or get ready to help me, I instructed. I filled them in on what I knew, and both of the girls hid around a corner. All three of us waited. The moment that I heard the girl's voice, I looked up. She wasn't coming from upstairs. Instead, she was coming out of the girl's bathroom behind me. Her face was already cut up, and she was clearly upset about something. I quickly turned around and ran over to her. I put my arm out to grab her. Unlike Kira, I couldn't grab her right away. There was a force pushing me back, but I didn't care. No one deserved to die the way that she did. I just kept pushing. "Listen!" I screamed at the girl. She couldn't hear me. I was assuming she was attacked before the boy. She had already been put into the trash can before the boy was attacked, and we were running out of time.
Oh,
"You're going to die," Cassandra screamed from the end of the hallway.
He just went prone.
The girl looked up confused. She heard Cassandra, but she couldn't hear me.
He's coming towards us in the
I
trench.
had no time to think about why.
He has a
I reached forward and took her by the arm, ripping her out of wherever she was proved to be a challenge. I was fighting with something, and there was another force that wanted her. Once I got her out and watched the color return to her skin. Her school jacket had blood all over the front of it. I moved to get her down the hallway into Cassandra. "Once I get the boy, we're going to have to run for it," I said. Cassandra took the girl and watched me go back down the hallway. The boy was coming out of one of the art rooms, but something was wrong. The killer was already here. I could see him at the end of the hallway. "Run!" Kira snapped as we watched the killer start running down the hallway. I ran over to the boy and grabbed him by his collar. I tried to spin us around to get out. I could feel his hands wrap around my wrist as we fell and squirmed on the floor. I quickly brought him to his feet. Like the girl, he was clearly confused about what had just happened to him. "Run!" Kira screeched. I turned my head and pushed the boy backward, his back hitting the locker. I could see Kira running down the hallway. I watched as she took him by the hand and we started running. "Crap!" Cassandra snapped as we turned the corner. I screamed loudly and almost fell to my knees. Something hit my back. I tried to reach back and pull it out while we were running. Once I finally got it, I was looking at Glass. "The scientist is here," I screamed at the group. Something felt different about this chase. Something felt more visceral. "Watch out!" Cassandra screamed as a baseball smacked Kira. It hit her in the side with enough force to knock her over. The boy stopped running to help her up. Kira spit blood out all over the floor. I stopped running to see where the attack came from. There was a guy holding a baseball bat standing at the back door. His eyes were bright red and his baseball bat was glowing yellow. "You have got to be kidding me," I screamed as we all ran for the front door. This time, I was going to be ready for the mascot killer. "Watch the stairs," I screamed at Cassandra. She moved just in time to have a hatchet miss her arm. I could hear the men laughing from the stairs. Cassandra ripped the doors open and we all ran out. I could hear my heart beating in my head. The adrenaline was almost too much for me to handle. Feeling the fresh air in my face as a nice reminder that we got out of the school. But I was extremely confused to see that the sun was up. "Get to my car," I screamed at Kira. "What about you?" Kira called back to me as they continued running across the parking lot. I made a note to park closer to the building next time. "There's something that I have to do." I screamed back as I ran over to where the groundskeeper was tending the dirt. I ran over to the dirt and dug my good hand into it. I was trying to move as fast as possible. I could hear Kira screaming behind me, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. As I dug through the dirt, I could hear something running next to me. I looked up and saw the groundskeeper coming. His face was twisted and distorted. His eyes were sunken in and he was running like an animal. I was digging as fast as I could and eventually I found something. I ripped it out of the dirt and got up and I was holding a hot pink diary. As I turned to run away, something slammed into my leg. This time, I could feel blood trickling down my pants and into my boot. I looked down to see a gardening tool sticking out of my skin. I clenched the book and screamed. I was sure that he was going to kill me.
closely, maybe
I
can
watched
take
his
out that
jaw
loose.
crack and pop as he closed in. I closed my eyes and heard my car screech. I looked up to see Kira behind the wheel. The boy was holding my flashlight like a weapon, shining it at the man.
Prone.
The light hit him and made him screech. I watched as he ran away, going behind the school.
Damn, I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it.
I felt a hand grab my arm and I was sure that it was another killer, but no, it was Cassandra. She pulled me to my feet and got me in her car.
What's up?
Kira, drive home, I screamed.
Oh,
I'm not sure if I will.
Cassandra and I watched as Kira started to leave the school grounds. We followed as closely
8
as
minutes left.
possible. As Cassandra drove, I looked at the small book in my hand. We finally had answers.
I'm like middle of nowhere. I'm kind of by like above where
I went
horse
through the
stable
diary
is.
page by page, and what we found was extremely disturbing. I
Oh,
can't
No, I'm
take
like
you
to
through
the
every
left of
page
it.
here,
Like
so
I'm like
I'm going
I'm
to
a bit
give
far,
you
but
some
it's
of the
like close to
highlights.
there to measure. If you go to like
The
where horse
diary
stable
belonged
is,
to Taylor Brown, and she was a student at the high school at some point. All of the dates on top of each page were scribbled out by her pen, though, and for a good reason. Taylor wrote about all the weird and unexplained things that she was seeing in the high school. On multiple occasions, the teachers would quit or disappear, only to be back in the school a couple of days later. Notably, her science teacher quit 4 times, and each time she came back. Taylor wrote about how the woman was clearly unstable, going as far as to toss rulers at her students, but nobody found this odd. Another page talked about how she followed the custodian one afternoon because he had been watching a student all day. The student's name was scribbled out. She followed him to the basement where she said the walls were pulsing and
I
moving.
keep thinking we're German.
She said it looked like the basement was breathing. She did not stay down there to look around. We also learned something troubling.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, Taylor knew Kira.
Oh, in front of us.
There are pages
Oh.
upon pages talking about their friendship. They were in drama class together. Taylor said
Oh,
that she
you got a
didn't get a
grenade!
major
I think
role
it might be
like
a sticky.
Kira. Notably, Taylor was in school the day
Oh,
that
chill
Kira
here.
was
Oh,
murdered.
there's a fucking tank in
She
front
wrote
of us.
about how the police came to remove her body, but the rest
is
of the
not
school
ours.
day went on like nothing had
gonna get behind
happened. Kira didn't have a funeral.
Put in,
We
80
filled
round.
Kira in on everything we read, but she didn't remember Taylor.
I don't know if I remember.
She couldn't remember what play she was in either. Cassandra and I decided not to push her too hard, and instead focused on what we did
Pull that shit
know.
up.
Before we left for our last trip, we organized all the information that we already knew.
Oh,
We saved Kira Jones. We learned her last name from Taylor's diary. Kira did remember her last name once we had said it to her. We also had saved Hunter James and Coraline Clark. Kira was glowing blue. Coraline was glowing red and Hunter was glowing
what
orange.
the fuck?
All of the killers were the same color except for the man with the baseball bat.
Okay.
I went through the list of killers with Cassandra. The red mask killer is the man who murdered Kira in the auditorium. We haven't seen him since the first day we went back, and we are still under the assumption that he is stuck
Oh,
in
is
the
it?
auditorium.
The artillery
We are not
killers.
sure it's even a man though.
Oh my god, we were
The killer mascot is always
Yeah,
upstairs in an
fuck it.
area that we haven't explored and will not be exploring anytime soon. He wears the school mascot hat and tosses hatchets. The hockey mask killer was in the gym hallway, an area that I would have liked to explore more. In the girls' locker room, I saw a girl escape out of the window and she was glowing green. We suspect that the girl who was glowing green made it out alive, but we have nothing else to go on regarding her. The woman who throws glass beakers is probably the same woman who Taylor was writing
User
about.
left your channel.
And finally, the killer who had murdered Coraline and Hunter. He was wearing a coach jacket. Cassandra and I believe that all of the killers were teachers or faculty. We could only confirm this if we had anyone's names. Cassandra and I took the list of names in our backpacks and we left the trio of teenagers at my house and took her car. I figured I would leave mine for Kira in case they needed a way to leave the house. We stressed the importance of all of them staying inside. So what is our goal exactly if this is the last time that we're going in? Cassandra asked me as we got in her car. We have to investigate the basement, I responded as I buckled up. The drive to the school felt somber. The only reason that I wanted to check the basement was because I was sure that we would finally find some answers. A room that breathes has to mean something in the grand scheme of things. As we pulled up to the school, I opened the door and I looked out for the groundskeeper. He wasn't outside, but it looked like he had put the dirt in the hole that I made. We should park right out front, I suggested to Cassandra. I think the door to the basement is in the first staircase, Cassandra said as she pulled up and we got out of the car. I was armed with my flashlight while Cassandra had a flashlight and a crowbar. Walking into the high school for the last time felt different. I waited by the door for a second to make sure that we weren't going to be jumped. Do you think the school gets angry when we remove a spirit? Cassandra asked me as we moved through the hallways. Well, it would make sense. We were fine last time until we decided to help Coraline and Hunter. I agreed with Cassandra as we slowly checked each of the doorways. Neither of us could remember this part of the building. I wonder if Kira was murdered because Taylor was getting curious. I mumbled as we opened the door to a classroom. It is weird that school went on that day like nothing happened, Cassandra said as she tried to step into a classroom. I watched her face hit a barrier. Cassandra took 2 steps back and grabbed her nose with her free hand. What the? I asked. I walked over to the classroom and put my foot out. My boot hit an invisible wall. We couldn't enter this classroom or any of the other classrooms that we tried. We both thought that it was weird but decided to keep looking for the staircase. I don't think the groundskeeper's evil. I sighed to Cassandra. He tried to kill you, she pointed out. When we found the staircase, I entered first. I knew that we had to go down, but I tried to use the stairs to go up and find another invisible barrier. I made a note of it and turned around to go downstairs. He was helpful before I messed with his dirt, I told Cassandra. She opened her mouth to respond to me but quickly shut it when we heard whistling coming from the next floor down. I readied my flashlight, fully prepared to hit a killer over the head with it. I had its name all figured out. I was going to call it the Whistler. When we turned the corner, we were both surprised to see an old man standing over a mop bucket. He was cleaning the floor. Hello? Cassandra called out to him. I could see her gripping the crowbar harder. The man put the mop back into the bucket and smiled at Cassandra. A spirit medium and a spirit walker come to see the heart of the school. He asked us as he added more soap to the bucket. What? Cassandra asked. The heart.